A simple woman named Vanessa Grant was savagely humiliated, drenched in soda and shoved toward the exit of Pinnacle Marketing Solutions in downtown Chicago. They dumped coffee on her desk, laughed at her clothes, and called her office charity case. But when the CEO walked in and called her honey, their world crumbled in seconds. What you're about to witness isn't just a story about workplace bullying. It's about the moment when hidden power meets public humiliation and the devastating consequences that follow. The 42nd floor of the Millennium Tower housed Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, a gleaming fortress of glass and steel where ambition wore Armani and success smelled like expensive coffee. Against the backdrop of Chicago's sprawling skyline, young professionals in designer suits moved with the calculated precision of sharks sensing blood. But in the corner cubicle by the break room, Vanessa Grant sat quietly at her desk, her fingers dancing across a worn laptop keyboard. She wore a simple gray cardigan, soft, comfortable, practical, over dark jeans and modest flats. Her long auburn hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her striking green eyes remained focused on the spreadsheet before her, analyzing quarterly revenue patterns with the kind of mathematical precision that would have impressed MIT professors. To her colleagues, she was invisible. Worse than invisible. She was an anomaly they couldn't ignore. But why was someone so brilliant hiding in plain sight? Vanessa had been at Pinnacle for exactly 14 weeks and 3 days. She'd taken the job through a temp agency, using her maiden name, drawn by the company's reputation for innovative marketing strategies. What she hadn't expected was to become the office punching bag. It started subtly, as workplace cruelty often does, whispered comments about her thrift store chic, eye rolls when she pulled out homemade sandwiches while others ordered from expensive downtown bistros, exclusion from happy hour invitations and project collaborations. But Vanessa had a secret, one so explosive it would soon turn their comfortable world upside down. 3 years earlier, she'd been Dr. Vanessa Morrison, a data analytics professor at Northwestern University, content in her academic bubble of research papers and statistical models. She'd met Logan Pierce at a university fundraiser, not knowing he was the Logan Pierce, the 34-year-old tech mogul whose Pierce Digital had revolutionized online marketing platforms. To her, he was just the charming guy who'd asked thoughtful questions about her presentation on consumer behavior algorithms. To him, she was the brilliant woman who could make numbers tell stories he'd never imagined. Their courtship had been quiet, private. Dinner dates at hidden gem restaurants, long walks through Lincoln Park, conversations that lasted until sunrise. When he proposed 18 months later with a vintage ring he'd found at an estate sale, she'd said yes not to his wealth, but to his heart. They'd married in a small ceremony in Napa Valley, surrounded by family and a handful of close friends. Vanessa had kept her maiden name professionally, a choice Logan supported without question. She loved her independence, her ability to succeed on her own merits. But now, sitting in this hostile environment, she wondered if her noble intentions had been naive. "Morning, Salvation Army." The voice cut through the office's morning bustle like a rusty knife. Keisha Daniels, the 28-year-old senior account manager, strutted past Vanessa's desk in her Louboutin heels, designer coffee in hand, her perfectly straightened hair swaying with each calculated step. Keisha was the queen bee of Pinnacle's young professional hive, ruthless, beautiful, and desperately insecure beneath her polished exterior. She'd clawed her way up from a modest background in Cleveland, and she projected her own shame onto anyone who reminded her of where she'd come from. Behind her trailed her loyal court, Anthony Patel, a cocky sales rep whose family money had bought him confidence but not competence, and Brianna Scott, a junior designer whose Instagram following had become her primary source of self-worth. Do you sleep in that cardigan, or is it permanently attached? Maybe we should start a GoFundMe to get you some real clothes. Keisha continued, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. Vanessa's fingers paused over her keyboard, but she didn't look up. She'd learned that engaging only fed their cruelty. Anthony chuckled, loosening his expensive tie. Come on, Keisha, be nice. Not everyone can afford to dress like they actually work here. The comment stung, but Vanessa remained focused on her screen. She was tracking social media engagement patterns for their biggest client, work that required intense concentration and statistical expertise, skills none of her tormentors possessed. What was she really working on that was so important? Brianna pulled out her phone, angled it toward Vanessa's modest lunch of homemade soup and crackers. This is going on my story. Hashtag office lunch goals, hashtag budget meals, hashtag yeeks. The cruelty was casual, thoughtless, the worst kind. They weren't trying to destroy her. They simply saw her as lesser, unworthy of basic human decency. But what they didn't know was that Vanessa's budget lunch had been prepared in a kitchen worth more than their annual salaries combined, in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan that Logan had surprised her with on their first anniversary. The weeks blurred together in a haze of professional competence and personal humiliation. Vanessa excelled at her work, turning in analyses that impressed even the most senior managers, but her colleagues' treatment only worsened. They accidentally scheduled important meetings during her lunch breaks. They reassigned her parking spot to visitors. They forwarded her emails to each other with mocking commentary. The worst part wasn't the cruelty, it was the silence. Other employees witnessed everything, but said nothing, too afraid of becoming targets themselves to stand up for basic human decency. Should she reveal who she is? Every night, Logan asked how her day went. Every night, she deflected with vague positives. She didn't want to be the wife who ran to her powerful husband when things got tough. She wanted to prove she could handle herself, that her worth wasn't tied to his success. But the isolation was wearing her down. "You're different lately, Jonas," Logan said one evening as they shared dinner on their balcony, the city twinkling below them. "Quieter." "Just tired," she replied, pushing food around her plate. "New job stress." He studied her face with the intensity that had made him one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs. The ability to read between lines, to spot problems others missed. "Vanessa," he said gently, "you know you don't have to prove anything to anyone, right? Especially not to me." She looked up, her green eyes reflecting the city lights. "I know, I want to earn my place." "You've already earned it, the day you were born." It was the kind of thing Logan said that reminded her why she'd fallen in love with him. Not his money or power, but his fundamental belief in human dignity. But dignity, Vanessa was learning, was a luxury not everyone could afford to recognize in others. The morning of October 15th started like any other, but there was electricity in the air, the kind that precedes devastating storms. Vanessa arrived at 7:30, as always, finding comfort in the quiet office before her tormentors arrived. She'd been working on a comprehensive analysis of client retention patterns, data that could save Pinnacle millions in marketing spend if implemented correctly. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was trying to help a company where she was treated like garbage. At 8:15, Keisha swept in wearing a new Chanel suit, her mood unusually vicious. She'd been passed over for a promotion the previous day, a promotion that had gone to someone with actual talent instead of just ambition. "Well, well," Keisha announced to the office. "Looks like our little charity case is here early, Vanessa. Trying to impress someone?
Newsflash, showing up early doesn't make up for showing up ugly. The office laughed, some genuinely amused, others nervously following the pack. Vanessa felt heat rise in her cheeks but continued typing. Anthony joined the performance, perching on the edge of a nearby desk. "Hey, Vanessa, quick question. Do you actually own other clothes, or is this some kind of social experiment? Like, are you studying how long someone can wear the same cardigan before it becomes a biohazard?" More laughter. Harder now. Meaner. Brianna started recording with her phone. "This is content gold. My followers are going to die." What was Vanessa really thinking in this moment? Inside her mind, Vanessa was calculating, not just the cruelty of their words, but the mathematics of their media.
Vanessa glanced at the files. Client reports that should have been Trevor's responsibility dumped on her desk like busy work. "I'm finishing the retention analysis," she said quietly. "It's due to corporate this afternoon." "The retention thing can wait. This is priority." He was lying, and they both knew it. This was about power, about putting her in her place. "Trevor," she said, her voice still soft but with an edge he hadn't heard before, "the retention analysis could save this company $3.7 million annually. These reports are busy work." The office went quiet. Vanessa had never pushed back before. Trevor's face flushed red. "Excuse me? Are you telling me how to prioritize company business?" "I'm telling you what the data says." For a moment, something shifted. A few colleagues looked up from their screens, perhaps seeing Vanessa clearly for the first time. Here was someone who actually understood the business better than their manager. But the moment passed quickly. "Listen, sweetheart," Trevor said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I don't know what fantasy world you're living in, but around here, I set priorities, not the temp who shops at Goodwill." Keisha sensed blood in the water. "Oh, she thinks she's some kind of business expert now. What's next, Vanessa? Gonna redesign our entire strategy?" The mockery was relentless now, a feeding frenzy of insecurity disguised as superiority. Anthony pulled out his phone. "This is going on LinkedIn when the office charity case thinks she knows better than management." But it was Brianna who delivered the cruelest blow. "You know what?" she said, standing up with theatrical flair. "I think it's time for some honesty. Vanessa, nobody here actually likes you. We all talk about how weird and pathetic you are, like constantly. You're our entertainment." The words hit like physical blows. Around the office, some people looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. The silence was complicit. "We have a group chat," Brianna continued, warming to her cruelty. "It's called Vanessa Watch. We share pictures of your outfits, make jokes about your lunches, place bets on how long before you quit or get fired." Each message was read aloud with theatrical emphasis, drawing laughter from the growing crowd of onlookers. But what they don't know will destroy them. What they didn't know was that Logan Pierce had been planning to visit Pinnacle that morning, not as the CEO making a grand entrance, but quietly, wanting to understand how his company really operated when leadership wasn't watching. What they didn't know was that he'd already been in the building for 20 minutes, having arrived through the parking garage to avoid the executive elevator. What they didn't know was that he'd been standing in the break room just around the corner for the last 5 minutes, listening to everything. "You know what I think?" Keisha said, emboldened by the crowd's energy. "I think you're here under false pretenses, like maybe you lied on your application or something, because there's no way someone like you belongs in a place like this." She grabbed Vanessa's coffee mug, a simple ceramic cup with a small chip on the handle, and dumped the contents across her desk, soaking her papers and laptop keyboard. "Oops," Keisha said with mock sweetness. "Thought you needed a bath. You always smell like sadness." The office erupted in laughter. Anthony started filming. Brianna clapped her hands together like it was performance art. Vanessa stood slowly, coffee dripping from her desk onto her jeans. Her green eyes, so often downcast, met Keisha's gaze directly for the first time. And in that moment, Keisha saw something that made her step back instinctively. Not anger, not hurt. Power. "Are you done?" Vanessa asked quietly. Her voice was different now, calmer, like she'd made a decision. "Are we done?" Keisha repeated mockingly. "Honey, we're just getting started, unless you want to quit right now and save us all the trouble." "Actually," said a deep voice from behind them. Logan Pierce stepped into view, 6'2" of controlled fury in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was swept back, his jaw set, his eyes, the same intense green as Vanessa's, scanning the room with the precision of a predator assessing prey. The recognition was instantaneous, but confusing. Everyone knew Logan Pierce's face from Forbes covers and business journals, but what was he doing here? And why was he looking at Vanessa like... "Honey," Logan said, his voice soft despite the steel beneath it. "You're ready to go?" The word honey fell into the silence like a grenade. Keisha's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Anthony dropped his phone. Brianna went pale, her hand flying to her throat. But Trevor tried to recover first, stepping forward with the kind of nervous energy that preceded career suicide. "Mr. Pierce, sir, we weren't expecting you today. I'm Trevor White, floor manager. If you'd like to..." "If you'd like," Logan interrupted, his eyes never leaving Vanessa's face, "to know who's been making my wife's life hell." The word wife detonated through the office like a sonic boom. Keisha stumbled backward, her designer heels catching on the carpet. Anthony's face went from smug to terrified in 3 seconds. Brianna actually whimpered. But it was the collective gasp from the rest of the office that really drove the point home. 50 people suddenly understanding that they'd been watching the systematic humiliation of their CEO's wife for months. And they'd done nothing. Logan walked to Vanessa, his movement deliberate and controlled. He took off his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders, covering the coffee stains. "I heard everything," he said quietly, for her ears only. Then he turned to face the room, and his voice carried the kind of authority that had built a business empire. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," he began, his tone conversational but deadly. "My wife, who has a PhD in statistical analysis from Northwestern, who could run circles around anyone in this room intellectually, has been working here for 3 months under her maiden name because she wanted to contribute on her own merits." He paused, letting that sink in. "And instead of recognizing her talent, instead of treating her with basic human decency, you turned her into your personal entertainment." Trevor tried to interrupt. "Sir, if you'd known what?" Logan's voice cut through the air like a blade. "That she mattered, that she was human, that she deserved respect?" The silence was deafening. "Because here's what I want to know," Logan continued, his gaze settling on each of the main tormentors. "Keisha Daniels, Anthony Patel, Breonna Scott, Trevor White, you're fired, effective immediately." The words hit like lightning strikes. Keisha found her voice first, desperation making her reckless. "You can't do that! I have contracts! I have clients!" "You had clients," Logan corrected. "Now you have nothing. Security will escort you out." "This is illegal!" Anthony shouted. "Wrongful termination!" Logan's smile was cold. "Illinois is an at-will employment state. I can fire you because I don't like your tie. But in this case, I'm firing you for creating a hostile environment. My lawyers are very good at making that stick." Brianna was crying now, her phone clutched to her chest like a lifeline. "Please, Mr. Pierce, I need this job. I have student loans. I have..."
You should have thought about that before you decided to make someone else's life miserable for your own entertainment. Trevor made one last desperate play. Sir, with respect, this seems like an overreaction. Workplace banter is normal and... Workplace banter? Logan's voice was dangerously quiet. You dumped coffee on her desk. You excluded her from meetings. You created a group chat to mock her appearance. You turned basic human dignity into a joke. He stepped closer to Trevor, and the manager instinctively backed away. Here's what's going to happen. Word is going to spread through this industry about exactly why you were fired, and I'm going to make sure it spreads accurately. Every HR department in Chicago is going to know that you were terminated for workplace bullying. The color drained from Trevor's face. In their interconnected professional world, that kind of reputation was a career death sentence. As security guards appeared to escort the fired employees out, Logan turned to the rest of the office. "Let me be very clear," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the floor. "This company succeeds because of talent, not because of who you know or what you wear or where you shop. My wife is brilliant. She saw patterns in our data that could save us millions, and instead of recognizing that, you let her be treated like garbage." He paused, scanning the faces of the remaining employees. "That ends today. Anyone who has a problem with treating colleagues with basic respect can join them in the unemployment line." Vanessa stepped forward, Logan's jacket still around her shoulders, and addressed the office herself. "I didn't come here to be rescued," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I came here to work, to contribute, to earn my place based on my abilities." She looked directly at some of the colleagues who had watched the bullying in silence. "But I learned something important. Standing by while cruelty happens makes you complicit. Silence isn't neutral. It's taking the side of the oppressor." Her words hung in the air, a challenge and a lesson. "I hope you remember that the next time you see someone being treated as less than human." Logan took Vanessa's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. She nodded, then turned back to her desk. Her laptop was ruined by the coffee, but her flash drive, containing months of analysis that really could revolutionize the company's approach, was safe in her purse. She handed it to one of the senior analysts who had always been quietly kind to her. "The retention analysis. It's good work. Use it." As they walked toward the elevator, the office remained silent, processing what they'd witnessed. Just before the doors closed, Logan spoke one last time. "By the way," he said, "Vanessa will be taking over as VP of Data Analytics. She's the most qualified person for the job, and she's been doing the work anyway." The elevator doors closed on a room full of people re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about power, respect, and the consequences of cruelty. News of the morning's events spread through Chicago's business community like wildfire. By lunch, 3 different business journalists had called Logan's office for comment. By evening, #OfficeKarma was trending on Twitter. Keisha tried to spin the story on LinkedIn, posting a lengthy essay about misunderstandings and learning experiences. The post was ratioed within hours, with dozens of former colleagues and classmates sharing their own stories of her cruelty. Anthony attempted to file a wrongful termination lawsuit, but no lawyer would take the case once they learned the details. Illinois' at-will employment laws were clear, and Logan's legal team had documented everything meticulously. Brianna's influencer career imploded overnight. Screenshots of the Vanessa Watch group chat leaked, showing months of cruel messages. Brands began dropping sponsorships, and her follower count plummeted. Trevor simply disappeared from the professional world, moving back to his hometown in Ohio to work at his father's insurance agency. But the real change happened at Pinnacle itself. Within a week, Logan had implemented new policies: anonymous reporting systems for workplace harassment, mandatory sensitivity training, and regular culture assessments conducted by third-party firms. More importantly, the story became a cautionary tale whispered in offices across the city. The simple lesson that you never know who you're really talking to, and that cruelty always has consequences. Vanessa did take the VP position, though she insisted on earning it through a formal interview process. Her first initiative was a company-wide analysis of communication patterns, identifying and addressing toxic behaviors before they could take root. On a quiet Sunday morning 3 weeks later, Vanessa and Logan sat on their balcony, sharing coffee and reading the newspaper. The city stretched out below them, busy and beautiful, and full of people trying to make their way. "Do you regret it?" Logan asked, folding his section of the Tribune. "Which part? Taking the job? Going through all that?" Vanessa considered the question, sipping her coffee from a new mug, this one without chips, a gift from Logan that read, "World's Most Brilliant Wife." "No," she said finally. "I needed to know I could stand on my own, and I needed to understand what people go through when they don't have power to protect them. And now? Now I use that understanding to make sure it doesn't happen to others." Logan reached over and took her hand. "You know what I love most about you? My devastating wit? Your belief that everyone deserves dignity, even when they don't extend it to you." It was true. Even after everything, Vanessa felt no satisfaction in her tormentor's downfall. She felt sadness for the insecurity and fear that had driven their cruelty. People hurt others when they feel small. The answer isn't to make them smaller. It's to help everyone feel bigger. 6 months later, Pinnacle Marketing Solutions was named one of Chicago's best places to work by Forbes. Employee satisfaction scores had soared, turnover had plummeted, and productivity was at an all-time high. The transformation hadn't happened because of fear, but because of a fundamental shift in culture. People began to see their colleagues as complete human beings, not as competitors to be diminished. Vanessa caned both names, honoring her past and her present, kept a photo on her desk from her wedding day, not the formal shots, but a candid moment of her and Logan laughing together, genuinely happy. It reminded her daily that true power isn't about dominance or control. It's about lifting others up. The story of what happened at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions became legend in Chicago's business community, but not for the reasons you might expect. It wasn't remembered as a tale of revenge or wealth flexing its muscle. It was remembered as a reminder that every person you encounter is fighting battles you can't see, carrying dreams you can't imagine, and deserving of respect you can choose to give. Vanessa Grant Pierce, who kept both names, honoring her past and her present, learned that she didn't need to hide her light to earn her place in the world. And everyone else learned that cruelty isn't just morally wrong, it's professionally stupid. Because you never know who you're really working for. So here's the question that matters. What would you have done? Would you have been one of the bullies, joining in because it felt safe? Would you have been a bystander, staying silent to protect yourself? Or would you have been the one person brave enough to stand up and say, "This isn't right"? The truth is, we all have that choice every single day. In our offices, our schools, our communities. Every time we see someone being treated as less than human, we get to decide who we really are. Don't just watch this story and feel good about the ending. Be the person who would have made the ending unnecessary. Be the person who treats everyone with dignity, not because of who they might be connected to, but because of who you choose to be. The next time you see workplace bullying, speak up. The next time someone is excluded or mocked, include them. The next time cruelty masquerades as humor, be brave enough not to laugh. Because respect isn't something people have to earn. It's something they deserve simply by being human. And you never know, the quiet person in the corner might be exactly who you need them to be. If this story made you think, share it. If it changed how you see workplace dynamics, comment below. And if you believe everyone deserves dignity at work, subscribe for more stories that matter. Because in a world full of people trying to make others feel small, be the one who helps them feel seen. That's not just good karma, that's good business, and it's the right thing to do.